Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry. It's time again for another Adventurer Spotlight, this one breaking the mold. I've preferred to focus on 3 and 4 star characters in the past, since those are things more people have access to than to 5 stars. But with Alfonse's release last week, he's our first 5 star given to all players. Make sure to max bond with him during the crossover event, and he'll be yours to keep. Given the unprecedented circumstances, I thought it'd only be fitting to make a spotlight on Alfonse. As always, we'll be talking over his kit, going over build ideas, and looking at some gameplay in this video. Let's begin with a general overview of Alfonse. He's an attack type white element sword unit with a max HP of 736 and a max strength of 487. His strength is ranked 5th among all light adventurers, yet his HP is 5th worst within the light pool. Alfonse clearly favors strength rather than HP, true to his attack typing. You might have noticed that the Alfonse we see in his special trial dishes out a ton of damage as well. Of course, that version has a few tricks that the copy we receive does not. Nevertheless, Alfonse has a solid skill and ability lineup. His co-ability, of course, is Dragon Haste, just like on all sword units. This is one of the co-abilities I think should be a low priority as far as spending Eldwater, unless it enables a second dragon transformation or a timelier transformation in a fight, which is very hard to determine without significant experience in that battle, then this co-ability is seldom noticeable. Alfonse's first ability is Last Burst. It's actually a noticeable downgrade to Last Offense, since Last Burst only provides a 10-second buff, while Last Offense grants one for 15 seconds. The amount of the buff to Alfonse's strength, 50%, isn't scaled up to compensate for this difference in duration either. Curran, a 5-star Shadow Axe unit, has Last Offense of 50%, which is strictly better than Alfonse's own ability. And for both of these units, sadly, these abilities are considered marginal at best. One-use abilities aren't great in Dragalia Lost unless their power level is extremely pushed. For instance, Marth may be an exception. Ultimately, I think we just chalk this ability up to Alfonse being a welfare unit. The positive is that unlike a 3-star, he actually has an extra ability, rather than having his Affliction Res ability split across 2 slots. And speaking of Affliction Res, Alfonse has Curse Res of 100%. This helps differentiate him from the 3 other light swords in the game, all of whom have Poison Res instead. Curse Res is currently good versus Zodiark, and to a lesser extent versus Raging Manticore, who inflicts both Curse and Poison. Chapter 5, where the campaign tends to get tough, is also an ideal setting for Alfonse's Curse Res. His resistance is not helpful at all, however, versus Shadow Imperial Onslaught or the Void Obsidian Golem. One day, Curse Res may help against High Zodiark, but I won't speculate much about that. Hildegard already cleanses Curse well, plus Wyrmprints like a Solitary Light and even Heavenly Holiday exist if really necessary to patch up non-Curse Res units. After High Mercury, there's no telling what that fight will be like. So let's move on to Alfonse's final ability, Skill Haste of 8%. It's a decent amount of skill haste, which is already a pretty good ability on sword units who tend to charge their skills very rapidly. There are a few ways to sequence your basic attacks with Alfonse or any sword unit. My understanding is that 3 hits into a 4-strike is best, since that avoids the jump slash in the sword combo, which has a long animation. In practice though, I find this is pretty hard to execute consistently. If you tend to mash attack rather than buffering inputs, you'll often jump before using your 4-strike to cancel that animation. So frankly, I tend to just execute the entire sword combo plus a 4-strike most of the time. I'll call the optimal combo short and the full combo long. Either way, skill haste helps. Let's pivot to Alfonse's skills to understand why. Blue Radiance is Alfonse's first skill. This attacking skill has a beautiful animation in my opinion, and a potent combination of effects. It both deals light damage ahead and increases Alfonse's strength. At its maximum, the strength buff reaches 15% for 10 seconds, a strong recurring buff, but for a short time. The downside to this skill is that, somewhat ironically, it's actually the slowest to charge primary skill of any sword unit, even when factoring in Alfonse's skill haste. It's not so slow as to be bad per se, but it does mean that stacking multiple strength buffs from Blue Radiance will be difficult to pull off. If using the short optimal combo, Alfonse needs a little less than 4 such combos to fully charge Blue Radiance. If using the longer combo instead, then Alfonse takes a little more than 2 such combos to charge it. On the bright side, literally, Soul, Alfonse's second skill, charges fairly quickly, taking between 5 and 6 short combos, or a little more than 3 long combos. It's comparable to the second skills on mini sword units, and faster to use than a fair number of them. Soul deals damage to surrounding enemies and restores a small amount of HP to Alfonse. The healing isn't especially good, but against wave-based content like defensive battles, it is pretty useful. I could see this coming in handy in future facility events, or versus Shadow Imperial Onslaught if you lack a strong poison res unit to use there. Perhaps that small healing could even make a difference against a current or future high dragon. It's hard to make that argument convincingly for now, but the healing is, at a minimum, a bonus and not a drawback. And, well, that's about all I have to say on Alfonse's kit. He's a straightforward and beginner-friendly character to build and play thanks to his 2 attacking skills. His last burst and Soul also provide some cushion, especially since it does take a while to hone your dodging skills in Dragalia Lost. So both the healing from Soul and the last ditch strength from last burst are more beneficial to newer players as well. You won't have to make a promotion decision for Alfonse, but you do need to decide whether or not to spend Champion's Testaments on him to power up his Blue Radiance and to boost his stats via the final mana circle. In my opinion, it's better to hold off if you're brand new. Use your Testaments for units like Marth or Fjorm, or possibly your tutorial 5-star summon, since these characters, being from the gacha, generally speaking, are going to be a little bit better than Alfonse in terms of stats and their kits. Having said that, if you just really like Alfonse, or have extra Champion's Testaments from how generous this event is, Alfonse isn't a bad investment. At least as a light unit, he'll do well for all types of dailies and general content since he has no weaknesses. His self-healing will probably help with auto battle too. Now, as we discuss build ideas for Alfonse, I'll show off some gameplay of him in action. As always, it's not perfect, but I hope you get a sense of his power versus the Obsidian Golem and Veronica. He isn't ideal for the Obsidian Golem, but as a light unit with good dodging or with a dual res weapon, he can still get the job done. You'll also notice one of the weaknesses of skill haste. Sometimes you just need to conserve skills to use them for invincibility frames, rather than cast them on cooldown. You see this a lot versus Obsidian Golem, since I want to avoid getting hit with dull at all costs. In any case, on to the builds. First, let's talk dragons. Alfonse is an attacker, and he wants a strength dragon to boost his damage output. Cupid is one of the best dragons for all light attackers, Alfonse included, since he grants 60% strength when max unbound. Gilgamesh is a respectable runner-up, providing 50% strength and 15% shadow resistance. Lindworm comes in third with 45% strength, and being a 4-star, she's more available. Liger follows her with 30% strength and 30% HP, and Halloween Silk is after that with 20% to each stat. Without access to any of those, just use Jupiter, who we get for free after beating Chapter 4 of the story. Now, onto weapons. Alfonse brought along a new toy boy obtainable through the Lost Heroes event, Folkvanger. This 5-star light sword doesn't have quite the stats of Zex's End, which is crafted using twinkling sand and light insignias, but it is a very good option for newer players or anyone who lacks the time or materials to craft Zex's End instead. The passive on Folkvanger is new to the game. HP below 50% equals strength of 15%. This does lack synergy with Soul in some ways, and you may have to deliberately take some hits to enjoy the strength boost. But the raw stats on this weapon are still fairly good regardless. Zex's End is definitely the best option, however, thanks to it having a third attacking skill and higher stats overall. For Wyrmprints, the Shining Overlord stands out as one of the best all-around choices for Alfonse. He has multiple attacking skills and he's a sword unit, so the 40% skill damage is fantastic for him. To complement this, you could use something like Levin's Champion, Jewels of the Sun, or Warrior Maiden. Levin's is the best choice for all-around damage. Jewels of the Sun gives strength and lets Alfonse charge his skills more quickly, but he'd still probably need an Archer's Co-ability as well to really do so with fewer combos. Warrior Maiden is the best choice for waves of foes, especially since the recovery potency can help out his soul. The Heroes Arrive, of course, is another superior option for this event, thanks to its Valor boost and its higher amount of Slayer strength. The downside to that print, though, is that Alfonse needs a teammate's help to utilize its healing double buff, since his skill and ability kit contains no way to buff his own defense. And as far as teammates go, Alfonse is genuinely very self-contained. Unless you're using a Wyrmprint that needs a specific teammate to fully utilize, then pretty much any Curse Res allies work well with him. Lucretia is a standout since she boosts Alfonse's skill damage, plus her Energized mechanic is effective for Alfonse since both of them share Curse Res, and the Curse Affliction won't interrupt their energy buildup. Other than that, someone like Hildegard would also be a reasonable choice. Her co-ability should help Alfonse's self-healing from Soul. Finally, I'll mention Halloween Elisanne for those who have her. As a sword user, Alfonse can break bosses quickly with 4 strikes, so Halloween Elisanne's Gauge Accelerator synergizes pretty well. All 3 of these units are 5-star light characters with Curse Res, so it's not surprising to hear they're some of the best choices. But remember, pretty much everyone is okay with Alfonse. Last up, let's talk about Alfonse's competition. There are 3 other light sword units, as I alluded to earlier in this video. First up, there's the 3-star Raymond. Raymond's utility comes from the fact that his primary skill, Alberian Cleave, inflicts stun. This comes in handy for tough facility events or speedruns where afflictions that immobilize bosses can be helpful. Other than that though, Raymond is probably worse than Alfonse. His stats are lower, his abilities are weaker, and his second skill, Alberian Majesty, does less damage than Soul, has a similar charge time, and doesn't have any secondary effects like healing. Next, there's the 4-star Odetta. Alfonse has exactly 1 more point of HP and strength than she does. Odetta's utility mainly comes from her second skill, Freedom Ring, which heals her and nearby allies for a lot, and boosts their strength by 15% for 15 seconds, or even longer if she's promoted, since she has a buff time up ability unlockable at 5-star. Odetta can also debuff enemy defense on her attacking skill, Liberty Slash. She also has an HP of 70% equals strength passive. Honestly, she's one of the best natural 4-stars due to how good her kit is. That said, a lot of her damage output comes from how much her buff helps her team. On maps where you need to spread out from allies often, like in defensive battles, Alfonse has slightly better damage output. Finally, we come to the other 5-star, Albert. Albert's stats surpass those of Alfonse, and Albert has a very solid kit as well. Much of his damage revolves around electrifying himself via his Thunderous Impulse skill, which charges slowly over time. Once electrified, started, Albert deals massive damage with his quick to charge lightning burst skill, plus his overall strength is increased by 25%. He also has a passive to boost 4-strike damage by 50%, only seen on him and Xander. He's an absolute monster in terms of raw damage, but he, just like Raymond and Odetta, has poison res rather than curse res like Alfonse. For now, we don't really know how much of a hindrance or a help that will be in future content. For existing content though, all 4 of these sword units are genuinely very good, and each of them has a reasonable set of uses. Alright, and well, that's about all I have to say on Alfonse. He's a very solid unit who's a great boon to brand new players since he's beginner friendly, has a favorable element, and some of his mechanics help players recover from damage or potential mistakes. Some aspects of his kit, like Last Burst, do strike me as being intentionally weaker because he is a welfare or free character. Yet, the difference in power between him and other units isn't so steep that he's bad by any means. Indeed, one day we may find he's the best light sword unit of all. That will come down to how important his unique curse res is, since it could free up a Wyrmprint slot for other valuable damage dealing options. All in all, I'm very happy to have him, and I'm glad he's free for everyone who's playing right now. Even if he's your only Fire Emblem hero, he's more than just a bench warmer in this game. Just make sure to befriend him before the event ends so you can add him to your roster permanently. So that's what I think about Alfonse. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, everyone, thank you so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.